Hey friend, welcome back to the Vision Driven Health Podcast, your go-to show for creating healthy habits that last in partnership with the God who created you. If you ate more than you meant to last week on Thanksgiving and are feeling like the rest of the year is just a free-for-all until New Year's, if you find yourself overindulging and then writing off the whole rest of the day because, well, you already went off track, or if you're someone who is either 100% in on healthy eating or completely off the rails, this episode is for you. I believe wholeheartedly that healthy eating isn't never having your favorite foods. I also believe that it is possible to have a mentality and approach to health that doesn't feel restrictive or filled with shame from not eating good, quote unquote, enough. Today, I'll be sharing how to break this pattern and begin to create healthy, consistent habits for years to come. I have the funnest way for you to make some massive progress in your health between now and the end of the year. If you love Christmas, the movie Elf, want to improve your health, and could really use some accountability with your health habits, then this is the perfect opportunity for you. My team and I created the 12 Days of Health Buddy Challenge. This is a free accountability challenge that you can begin any day you'd like with a friend of your choosing. Each of the 12 days, you'll have a health habit, a mindset hack, and a way to support your buddy in their health journey. You can grab the 12 Days of Health Buddy Challenge PDF totally free at visiondrivenhealth.com/buddy. So I think that the all or nothing mentality is probably the biggest mindset challenge that I see my clients face when it comes to creating consistency in their healthy habits. And even if, there's some other challenges or struggles that are present, whether it's with their habits or just the busyness of their schedule or whatever it may be, oftentimes when you peel back all the layers, at the core, it is an issue with having an all or nothing mentality. Either, you just are totally on board, eating super healthy, saying no to all the things you've deemed unhealthy and that you're not having, yes to all the things that you're supposed to be having. And then as soon as something comes up, as soon as something gets in the way, or maybe it's a little bit slower of a progression, but at the end of the day, you get to this point where all bets are off and it feels like you're just totally out of control, and then it's frustrating. It can be discouraging. It's a place where the enemy loves to come in and cultivate that shame where you get discouraged. You start to say, see, this is why I don't even bother. I can't be consistent. I am so weak-willed. I can't help it. If this food is here, then I'm just bound to get it. I'm all in or I'm all out. And I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, why? Why does it have to be this way? Why am I wired to just be all in or completely off the rails? And honestly, I think it's because it's easier. You're either making one specific kind of a choice or a different kind. So, and what I mean by that is if you've already decided, okay, these are the yes foods, these are the no foods, that's easier than if you're like, okay, maybe can I have this? Or it just takes a lot of the guesswork out. And then same thing, if you're just totally off the rails, you're like, well, I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to eat what I want to eat when I want to eat it. And so in some ways, the all or nothing mentality is just legitimately easier mentally. And if you're someone who has young kids or you work a lot of hours or you just find yourself overall busy and you've got a lot on your plate, then we also get to the point where we experience something called decision fatigue. And what that is when you've basically used up so many decisions throughout the day, whether that's deciding how to navigate your kid's tantrum, how to figure out how to get what you need to done at work and by the deadline. And the holidays are filled with extra challenges and whatnot. And when it comes to, okay, now what do I want to eat? Your brain's just spent. You're like, I don't know. I don't care. Whatever's easy and tastes good. And so that is a factor as well. A lot of times I see this where if someone is trying to get healthy, one of the first questions they'll ask me is for a meal plan. They're like, do you do meal plans? Can you just give us a recipe or give us a plan that we can follow? Because again, and I can appreciate why. And I actually do encourage and coach my clients on how to create their own meal plans and plan from week to week. But the reason why, one, that's super helpful and I coach my clients to do it, and two, because people usually ask for it, is, again, it simplifies things. You've got it already laid out. You don't have to think about it during that day because you already pre-decided what you're going to eat and what that looks like. Now, what often happens is that we are really up against some underlying beliefs. And one of those big underlying beliefs, or I guess you would say perspectives, and this one I think is more often than not a subconscious one that's a little more difficult to identify until after the fact. And this one is self-sabotage. And the reason why that will happen, which you're like, I don't understand. Like, I want to make the healthy habits. I don't want to fall off track. I want to lose the weight. I want to maintain the weight loss that I had. The reason why you are subconsciously sabotaging yourself is because underneath it all, you have these beliefs about yourself that you haven't identified or that you haven't dealt with in such a way that they're not, basically, for lack of a better way of saying it, ruling the way you approach your life. So an example of some of these are, you might say to yourself, I always fall off track. That's a belief that you have about yourself. Or you'll think, I'll never hit my goal weight. Again, this is a belief that you have. And even though maybe you'll put forth effort to try to hit your goal weight, at the end of the day, you've already decided within yourself that I'm never actually going to be able to do that. That's not possible. Or even, I know in different cultures, or even just different cultures, maybe the way that you've kind of identified yourself, you might say, well, I'm a foodie. I like food, which I personally, I consider myself a foodie. I really like food. And I also struggle with being a control freak. And so I really like to make sure that what I eat is super delicious and tasty. But because of that, if you've defined yourself as a foodie that's just like, oh, I can eat so much and I always like to eat so much. I've said before on previous podcasts, I think it's been a bit before I shared this fun fact about myself. But when I was in college, for whatever weird reason, I called myself Chief Hungry Bear. And I totally had an identity piece where I considered myself someone who just eats everything and anything. I'm not picky, and I'll eat it in mass quantities. I prided myself in being able to eat a lot of food all at once and kind of being like, I can hang with the guys or whatever with how much I ate. And so if I ever didn't eat that much, even when I was a little kid, I had a huge appetite. And I remember we would do tailgates when we would go to the Padres games, and I would eat like 4 burger patties with cheese. And if I ever only had like 1 or 2 patties, our friends would be like, Robin, are you okay? You only want 1 or 2? And so it was like this just identity piece where I felt like that's who I was. I had to eat a lot. So, maybe you have a similar mentality, but whatever your underlying beliefs are, your brain literally works to maintain that as a reality. Even if you lose a whole bunch of weight and maybe you've been able to convince yourself for a certain period of time to eat a certain way, if you being someone who's consistent with those healthy habits, or you being someone who has lost that much weight is in contrast to your underlying beliefs, if that feels outside of your identity or how you know yourself to be, you may subconsciously undermine your progress as time goes on. And that's one of the big reasons why I like to emphasize and celebrate the victory of not just weight lost, but weight lost in a healthy way and weight lost and maintained. Because it is very difficult to maintain it oftentimes because we haven't dealt with the underlying beliefs that we have, which can fuel that all or nothing mentality. Another mindset piece that can really feed into this all or nothing mentality is low self-esteem. And low self-esteem can come in a variety of ways, unfortunately. whether that's the way you were raised, it could be some childhood trauma. It could be insecurities that maybe have developed more recently. I think for myself as a young mom, having had 2 kids, just as females, I think we kind of go through that like, oh, my body's completely different. It's never going to be the same. And kind of really honestly learning to love and embrace what our body has done and being able to bring life into this world versus trying to fit into the world or society's mold of like, oh, like, look what you can do to try to get back and make it look like you've never had kids, which when you really think about it, why would you want to look like you've never had kids if you've had kids? In some ways, it's kind of like a badge of honor. Yes, I think be healthy, be strong, be fit, be a healthy weight. But at the end, I know for me, like my stomach is never likely going to look the same. My boobs are not likely going to look the same. And I'm not interested in doing any kind of surgeries to make them look a certain way. And I'm okay with that. Sometimes I do feel insecure about it, but that can contribute to low self-esteem. It can also be a different kind that's not necessarily a physical or aesthetic low self-esteem. It can be one where you just don't have confidence in yourself, maybe because of the broken promises or agreements you've made with yourself. Maybe you've told yourself, you know what, I'm never going to reach this weight again, or I'm never going to be that person who doesn't have control or is this or does that. And even small agreements of like, okay, I'm going to get up at this time every day, or I'm going to go to the gym every day, or I'm going to meal prep, or I'm going to start doing this. We say these things to ourselves, and then, life happens, something comes up, we don't follow through. And what we don't realize is that does undermine our self-confidence. That does undermine the belief that we have in ourselves to follow through. That is where we start to create some of those underlying beliefs of, I'm not consistent. I always fall off track. I'll never hit my goal weight, because you've created these experiences where that feels valid and that feels like the truth. The truth is, though, it doesn't have to continue to be your story. We've got God and His grace and His presence and access to the one who created our bodies to partner with in creating change. So to continue on this theme of talking about the mindset things that can be underneath our challenge with the all or nothing mentality, the last one I want to touch on here is really having to undo the way that you have labeled food. So if you have demonized certain foods as unhealthy, and then there's this it's just this mental game that I've heard so many, you see it in movies and TV shows too, but I've heard so many people use where it's like, you'll use phrases when it comes to trying to be healthy. It's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to be good. Someone says, oh, do you want to go get ice cream? You're like, oh no, I'm trying to be good. I can't, I won't. Or if, same scenario. Someone's like, oh, you want to go to ice cream? And you're like, yeah, I'm going to be bad. Like, I'm going to go eat the ice cream. And so then now we've labeled what could otherwise just be a part of a healthy lifestyle. I think I personally, given the opportunity to get ice cream with friends, I go get the ice cream with friends. I don't consider that being bad or being off track, because what I have created for myself is a very intentional, healthy lifestyle that is flexible and includes those kinds of experiences, because I prioritize healthy home-cooked meals majority of the time. And it's important to evaluate, to be able to look at the relationship you have with food and assess, okay, have I labeled certain kinds of foods in such a way that it's tripping me up in being able to be consistent and being able to find a middle ground here that, again, isn't that all or nothing mentality. So I don't know if that resonated with you or not. You might find yourself sitting with that and thinking, oh man, maybe it is that it's just easier and I'm, totally tapped out and it's decision fatigue. Or you might be like, you know what? I think there's some underlying beliefs I need to address, which this is the first thing that I have all of my clients do, is identify those underlying beliefs. Or maybe you're like, you know what? It probably is the low self-esteem, or maybe it's a combination and you've also created those unhealthy labels for certain ways of eating. Whatever it is, often our next question is, what do you do about it? Like, okay, cool. I've realized all the ways that I think in such a way that's messing me up. I would like to not. So, the first thing that I encourage people to do, I've said this many times on this podcast, and I don't think it's a one-time exercise, and so I have no problem bringing it up again. In fact, it is why I named this podcast the Vision Driven Health Podcast. But you want to get clear on your vision, right? And one thing I do teach in the Healthy Weight Loss Academy is creating that vision, and that includes creating a vision where the foods you may have previously deemed bad are a part of this healthy process. And, it does take time to really unpack and peel back the layers of why or how different foods have been labeled a certain way in order to create that healthier relationship with food. But the key is to become aware of the emotion that you've attached to certain foods. So as you're creating this vision, you do want to kind of sit with some different, when you're creating your vision, I do encourage you to identify those underlying beliefs first. Identify any lies, beliefs that, may be getting in your way, like I had just talked about a moment ago. And then once you have clarity on that, when you're crafting your vision, you can keep those things in mind, and you can be like, okay, well, I have this underlying belief that I can't enjoy dessert without eating the whole bag or the whole pie or the whole whatever. Okay, well, what would it look like for my vision to include enjoying dessert in an intentional, portioned way? And so those are things you kind of want to keep in mind when you're putting together this vision. And some ideas that you can include in your vision, things like, when I eat foods I know are unhealthy, I give myself grace and get curious about what led me to that choice. Because oftentimes, I know I've been there, we've all been there, where we do, quote unquote, go off the rails and it's like, man, that's not what I meant to do. I know for myself, I get really frustrated if I make a poor choice and it didn't even taste that good. I'm like, it wasn't even worth it. But instead of beating yourself up about it, you want to get curious and think, okay, was I feeling stressed? Am I not eating foods that are higher in protein and healthy fat and fiber that would, provide my body with the nutrients I need? Was I having some hormonal imbalances? Am I about to start my period? Different questions you can ask yourself where you're just getting curious so that you can kind of take the I'm bad versus good, I'm all in, I'm all out of the picture, and just really better understand yourself and the situation surrounding that choice. Because then you can actually make better choices in the same situation in the future because you took some time to kind of evaluate that. The other thing is your vision can include things like, I have permission to eat whatever I want. I actually, when I first started my coaching practice, I had made shirts for my clients that said, I don't have to, I choose to. Because I think so often with the diet mentality, it's like, oh, I can't, I'm on a diet, or I have to eat this, or I can't have that. Whereas what I really want to encourage my clients is to know, I totally can eat that whole pie if I want to. However, that does not line up with my vision. That does not line up with what I'm trying to do for my body and my health and my future. Therefore, I won't. I could, but I won't. Another phrase you can include in your vision is something like, I am committed to making choices that benefit my body, and sometimes that includes foods that are otherwise deemed unhealthy. And so just putting it out there, I've even encouraged my clients to get as specific as, let's just say, for example, maybe they really enjoy, I don't know, going through a drive-through at their favorite fast food restaurant, and they're like, but I just really enjoy eating the number 3 with whatever. And so you can say, okay, so maybe your vision says, I plan to go through the drive-through once a month for, a special circumstance. Or maybe, you can just get really specific and just call it out. I think the less we can kind of, create rules or oh no's or ahs around our vision and just trying to be straightforward, the better. And the more we realize there's so much grace and recognizing that there is no off-ramp or on-ramp, it's just all on the path, the less, again, we can have this all or nothing mentality where it's like, I'm either on or I'm off. It's like, well, I consider myself always on my health journey. I can tell you right now, for Thanksgiving, I very much enjoyed myself. I ate a lot of foods that were higher in carb and higher in sugar and all the things or whatever, but I don't consider myself off the rails or off track because I know how I eat. My identity is not around eating perfectly. My identity is not around not eating certain foods. My vision for my health is that by and large, on a day-to-day basis, outside of these special once a year circumstances for holidays, I prioritize protein. I cook my food. And even on the days that I still had, extra pie or ate a certain way, I still would have a high protein breakfast, and maybe the lunch with the leftovers was more indulgent or the dinner was more indulgent. Like, I still am trying to get in the things I know are good for my body. It doesn't have to be, oh, I know I'm having pie today or I'm eating leftovers today, so everything's a wash. And again, that takes time and effort if, previously you had the all or nothing mentality, but just knowing that it's a possibility and knowing that you can kind of take it day by day can be really freeing. Another idea for something you can include in your vision is, I am on a journey of healthy living, not a sprint to a certain weight. While my course is called the Healthy Weight Loss Academy, I really just want my clients to understand what it looks like to be on a long-term journey of health. And that really does come from focusing on the habits, focusing on your future, focusing on your vision, and not just the number on the scale. And so that's number one, kind of an all-together thing when it comes to what do you do about it? Get clear on your vision and really try to get specific with those statements on what's included in your vision. And the vision's not like a one-time thing where you do it and then you don't alter it. It's actually very malleable and it's kind of alive, so to speak, and that you, as you go through your life and you go through your health journey, you're like, oh, I need to add this, or you know what? I don't think that's actually serving me. Let me take that out. And you mold and you shape it according to your needs. The second big thing on what to do with the all or nothing mentality, how to kind of shut that down, is take hold of grace. God's grace is powerful. It is transformative. I love talking about God's grace because it is not just that which covers our sins. It's not just like, oh, thank God for his grace. Well, thank God for his grace for that reason, but then also thank God for grace because it is the fuel for transformation. By God's grace, you can break those mentalities and beliefs that have been tripping you up. By God's grace, you can stop being an all or nothing person. By God's grace, you can be intentional and start your day with a healthy, high protein breakfast, have something that you weren't planning on for lunch, and go back to a healthy dinner later on that day without it being, oh, I ruined it and now we're done. All by God's grace. And I think that comes through prayer, that can come through journaling, that can come through even taking advantage of different resources that he's providing. But I would just say include him as much as possible in the process, praying over your food, praying before you go into the grocery store, praying, in all the ways, and just make it fun and conversational with him. The next thing is, so number one was craft the vision. Number two, take hold of God's grace. Number three is to create an inclusive approach. And what I mean by this is try not to declare that you won't eat certain foods. We don't want to just chop up, we don't want to go back to the this food's good, this food's bad. We don't want to do a diet, basically. And unless you have an allergy, it just really isn't necessary to excommunicate certain foods. It's possible to create a healthy relationship with the foods that you have felt unable to moderate. If you feel like, oh, it's just all bets are off. If I have it in the house, I'm going to eat it. I can appreciate not bringing it in the house so that you can be consistent. But I would also encourage you to maybe one item at a time, kind of teach yourself to be moderate with it. Like, yeah, I had 2 of those things, cookies, chocolates, whatever, and then I was good. And that was it. I didn't finish the whole bag. And really building that confidence in yourself of like, I can be intentional. I can enjoy this thing without going completely off the rails. The other thing is, like I said, this weekend with all that I ate for Thanksgiving and the leftovers or whatnot, I think, some might ask, okay, well, am I off the rails? Did I fail? Am I outside of my vision? And the answer to all of these questions is no, because this is what I planned to do. I was intentional with my portions, and I have even knowing that I was eating more than usual, I've been trying to get out for longer walks after the bigger meals. And honestly, here's the really important thing that I've kind of already alluded to, but I know how I normally eat. I know this isn't all the time. This is a holiday experience. And once the festive food is gone, I'm back to my usual routine. But even during the festive eating, it's not an like all bets are off thing. I was still prioritizing protein. I still tried to choose quality foods. I still made nearly everything we ate from home. This is just all part of creating a lifestyle. And I can tell you that this, for me, has come after many, many years of trial and error with finding what I like, what is simple and easy to cook, learning and understanding the amounts of protein and nutrients that are beneficial for my body. And again, that's something that I work with my clients on to really figure out, okay, what are your macros? What does your body need? Here's how you can, kind of check in with your body and discover whether or not that feels right for you. But again, without sounding like a broken record player, I think it's just so important to know that it is a journey. It is not a, okay, cool, check. I did the vision. Okay, cool, check. I hit my goal weight. Okay, cool, check. Like, it's a process. It's now your new way of doing things. So my big encouragement for you would be to set aside some time, even if it's just 2 minutes after this episode, to get clear on what you want the rest of this month to look like. I mean, and if that sounds even like too much, what you want the rest of this week to look like. Does it have to feel like you're off the rails? Regardless of whatever happened for Thanksgiving or over this weekend or whatever holiday events you have coming next weekend, can your experience be a mixed bag of intentional effort to meal prep and eating your holiday favorites? Can both exist together? Can it be going to the gym 1 to 2 times a week instead of the 4 to 5 you'd like to? Does it have to be 5 or nothing? Does it have to be 4 or nothing? Can you maintain, some kind of consistency with the routine, even if it isn't the full-blown thing you want to be? Can it be an indulgent lunch without becoming a binge later that evening because you had the indulgent lunch? And I'm just giving these as examples for you just to kind of get your mind going so you can really start to visualize what this month could look like, how it can be different for you if it is something you struggle with that all or nothing mentality, and really encouraging you to find the way to become okay with things being imperfect, with things not being completely in or completely out, and really try to see the value in progress. Again, even if it feels minuscule, even if it feels like, ugh, what's the big deal? I cooked 1 meal last week. I went to the gym 1 time. To which I would say, well, if you normally wouldn't, woohoo, like that's noteworthy. Let's celebrate that and just increase the frequency of that and really being able to celebrate progress. Because the closer you can do that, the more you can celebrate that, the more you can embrace that, the closer you'll be to freedom from the all or nothing mentality. Friend, I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been valuable to you. If nothing else, I hope that it has just given you some ideas of how you can begin to be intentional, to create some structure, to put some things on paper and explore what might be going underneath it all, and also see how you can start to make some shifts that align, that feel good with who you are, with what God's calling you to do, with just what works for you and your family, and being able to have more energy, have more vitality, and honestly show up in the ways that God's made you for. So with that, friend, I bless you, and I look forward to talking with you next time.